The question is, do the Jews have a hereafter? Do they believe in some kind of an afterlife? They definitely do. There's not a whole lot in the Old Testament about what we might call the intermediate state. What happens when someone dies immediately? We would say, well, they go immediately to heaven. Their soul, at least, goes immediately to heaven or to hell. Their body lays in the grave until the resurrection. The Old Testament and Hebrew theology says very little about what happens in that intermediate state. But a central Jewish hope is that there will one day be a physical resurrection of the body. Daniel chapter 12 is kind of their central text, and that text actually gets picked up a lot in what we call Second Temple literature. What the Jews are writing just prior to when Jesus comes, they talk about that text all the time. It's their basic resurrection text. But here's some of the key differences between Jewish understanding and a Christian understanding. A Jewish understanding always held that the resurrection would be corporate. The only resurrection that they knew of was one that would be everybody all at the same time. And a Jewish understanding, because of Daniel 12, typically associated resurrection with bright shining. You know, he says they shall shine like the stars. So when Enoch writes about, or whoever wrote First Enoch writes about the resurrection, they speak of us all being resurrected at once, someday in the distant future that we don't know when, and when we're resurrected, we shine. Now, I think that's incredibly important for when we build an apologetic for Jesus' resurrection.
Yeah, not that First Enoch is inspired.
Yeah, no, not mentioning it as expired. It's just part of the Jewish literature. Yeah, they don't view it as scripture, but it's what the Jews were thinking and writing, and we can tell kind of what their attitude is about resurrection based on how some of those authors write about resurrection. So Jesus comes along, and he dies, and a group of Jews all of a sudden decide to say, we're going to pretend he didn't really die, so let's make up a story. But for them to make up a story that Jesus rose from the dead goes against every element of Jewish theology about the afterlife. They would have said, to say that, everybody rose from the grave. And since everybody didn't rise from the grave, they couldn't have claimed Jesus to and fit inside the Jewish worldview. But secondly, had they created the idea that Jesus rose from the grave, every mention of resurrection in the Second Temple literature describes the resurrected body as shining. So all the descriptions that they quote-unquote made up about seeing a resurrected Jesus would have described him shining.
And Second Temple literature being the literature that was written before Christ came and right around the time of Christ and just a few hundred years before.
Yeah. Sometimes called between the testaments or intertestamental literature. It's all the stuff the Jews continued to write after the Old Testament.
And they developed a lot of
New
stuff
Testament.
during that time. And that's where you have a real development and an understanding of demons as well.
Yeah,
and Satanology.
And the fall that we talked about earlier, Satan coming down and what took place in Genesis 6, the sons of God, the daughters of men, that all gets very expansive.